Have you ever felt like you are pouring your heart into a person who keeps their heart locked inside a box? You give more. You try softer. You speak slower. You beg for nothing but a single sentence of feeling. And still, they stay cold. Still, they pull away. Still, they look at you like your emotions are a problem they did not sign up for. That feeling is not your fault, but it is your invitation to understand something most people never will. What if the avoidant partner is not heartless? What if they are not incapable of love? What if the walls they built were not meant to keep you out, but to keep their own pain from spilling all over the floor? Stick with me until the end of this video, because by the time you finish, you will not just understand what melts the avoidant partner, you will finally see why your love was never the problem, and you will walk away with a psychological key that most therapists take years to teach. Let us start with a question that hurts. Why does your love seem to make them run? You think closeness will heal them. But for the avoidant partner, closeness feels like a threat. Not because you are dangerous, because their nervous system was trained very early to survive alone. Human psychology tells us that attachment patterns are set before we turn 7 years old. A child who cries and gets ignored learns that tears are useless. A child who reaches for comfort and gets pushed away learns that wanting is weakness. So they stop reaching, they stop crying, they stop asking. They build a fortress around their heart and call it strength. But it is not strength, it is fear, wearing a mask of independence. And when you come along with your warm eyes and your open hands, that fortress does not feel like home to them. It feels like an earthquake, because you are asking them to feel something they promised themselves they would never feel again: vulnerability. You see, the avoidant partner is not avoiding you. They are avoiding the version of themselves that needs, and that version terrifies them. Psychologists call this deactivation. When emotions get too deep, the avoidant brain flips a switch. Suddenly, they find flaws in you. Suddenly, they need space. Suddenly, your love feels suffocating, not because you changed, because their survival system kicked in. They would rather lose you than lose control. That is the painful truth. But here is what melts that wall. You cannot argue with a trauma response. You cannot logic your way through a nervous system that is protecting itself. What you can do is change the emotional atmosphere. And that starts with one radical shift: stop chasing. Stop chasing sounds like giving up, but it is the opposite. When you chase an avoidant person, you trigger their deepest fear. The fear of being swallowed, the fear of losing themselves inside your emotions. Every text you send when they pull away feels like a trap to them. Every plea for conversation feels like a demand. They do not hear love. They hear pressure. And pressure makes them disappear even faster. This is not rejection. This is psychology. The human brain reacts to emotional pressure the same way it reacts to physical threat: fight, flight, or freeze. The avoidant partner chooses flight every single time. So what melts them? Safe distance. Not cold distance. Safe distance. You stay warm, but you stop clinging. You stay kind, but you stop fixing. You stay present, but you stop chasing answers. That shift changes everything, because now you are no longer the threat. Now you are the first person who did not try to break down their door, and that makes them curious. Let me give you a deeper psychological layer. Avoidant people are highly sensitive to shame. They do not show it, but inside they carry a quiet belief that they are broken. They believe something is wrong with them for not feeling as deeply as you do. So they push you away before you can discover their secret. They leave first so they do not get left. That is the wound. And here is what melts that wound: radical acceptance. Not acceptance of bad behavior, acceptance of their emotional timeline. When you stop demanding that they feel on your clock, something inside them softens. You say, "I see you need space. Take it. I will be right here living my own life." That sentence is like water on a burn, because you are not punishing them for being different. You are not abandoning them for needing air. You are simply holding a safe container. And safety is the only thing that melts avoidance. But do not confuse safety with weakness. Being the safe person does not mean becoming a doormat. It means becoming the most emotionally regulated person in the room. That is your real power. When they pull away, you do not collapse. You do not spiral. You do not send 7 texts in a row. You breathe. You go for a walk. You call a friend. You cook a meal. You live. And that sends a subconscious message they cannot ignore. It says, "I am whole with or without you." That message is magnetic to an avoidant person because for the first time they are not responsible for your happiness. And that freedom lets them exhale. When they exhale, the wall cracks, just a little. But a crack is enough for light to enter. Here is another psychological truth. Avoidant partners crave connection just as much as you do. They just have a different strategy. You crave closeness through talking. They crave closeness through coexisting. You feel love through words. They feel love through actions. You want to merge. They want to remain separate but near. This difference is not a flaw. It is a mismatch of languages. And most couples break because neither side learns to translate. So what melts the avoidant partner? Learning their emotional language. If they show love by fixing your car or remembering your coffee order, that is their love. Do not punish them for not saying, "I miss you." Notice their silence. Notice their presence. Notice the small things they do when they think you are not watching. That noticing is the melt, because you are finally seeing them, not the version you want them to be, the version they actually are. And being truly seen is the deepest human need, even for the most avoidant person on earth. But here is where most people fail. They get one small crack in the wall and they rush in. They get one warm text and they pour out every feeling they have been holding back. That is a mistake. That is like pulling a plant out of the soil to check if it is growing. You will kill it. When an avoidant partner shows a small opening, match it. Do not overdo it. They say something soft. You say something soft back. They share a feeling. You thank them for sharing. You do not demand more. You do not say, "Finally, you are opening up." You simply receive. And then you go back to your life. That is how trust builds. Slowly, quietly, without pressure. Pressure melts ice into water. But with an avoidant partner, pressure freezes them solid. So remove pressure. Replace it with patience, not passive waiting, active patience. You are not waiting for them to change. You are living your life and leaving the door open. That is the ultimate melt. Now let us talk about fear. The avoidant partner is terrified of one thing more than anything else: losing themselves. They watched someone lose themselves in love before. Maybe a parent, maybe a past relationship. They promise themselves, "Never me." So they keep one foot out the door even when they love you. That is not betrayal. That is protection. And if you try to force that foot inside, they will run. But if you stand at the door and say, "I do not need you to stay. I want you to stay," there is a difference. That difference changes everything, because now they are not trapped. Now they are choosing. And an avoidant person will only stay when staying feels like a choice, not a cage. So give them the choice every single day. Not with words, with your emotional freedom. When they see you living fully without them, they stop running. They start wondering. They start leaning in. Not because you chased, because you did not. One more psychological key. Avoidant people have a very hard time with emotional intensity. Your big feelings scare them. Not because your feelings are wrong, because they never learned to hold big feelings without breaking. As a child, when they cried, no one came. So they learned that feelings are dangerous. They learned that feelings lead to rejection. So when you cry in front of them, their brain says, "Danger, get away." That is not cruelty. That is conditioning. So how do you melt that? You regulate yourself first. You calm your own nervous system before you speak to theirs. You take 3 deep breaths before you say how you feel. You keep your voice low, your words short, your body language open. You become the emotional anchor. And that anchor is the only thing that makes an avoidant person feel safe enough to feel. Because now, feelings are not a storm. Feelings are a quiet room. And for the first time, they might sit down in that room with you. But here's the hardest truth. You cannot melt someone who does not want to melt. You cannot heal someone who sees no wound. You can give safety. You can give patience. You can give space. But if they never choose to step toward you, you must choose yourself. That is not failure. That is freedom. Because your love was never meant to be a construction project. Your love was meant to be a bridge. And a bridge requires 2 sides. So as we close this first section, remember this. The melt does not come from more pressure. The melt comes from more peace. The melt does not come from begging. The melt comes from being so secure in yourself that their walls become irrelevant. And that security is not something you give them. That security is something you give yourself first. In the next section, we will go deeper. We will talk about the exact emotional triggers that make an avoidant partner lean in, and the one sentence that melts years of distance in seconds. But for now, take a breath. You are not broken for loving someone hard to love. You are just learning a new way to love, a way that starts with you, not them. Now let us go deeper. You have learned that chasing makes them run. You have learned that safety melts the wall. But there is another layer most people never touch. The avoidant partner does not just fear intimacy, they secretly crave it. They just do not trust it. And that distrust did not appear overnight. It was built slowly, brick by brick, through thousands of small disappointments. A parent who was there one day and gone the next. A caregiver who gave love as a reward and took it away as punishment. A childhood where emotional expression was met with irritation or silence. So they made a quiet promise to themselves. Never depend, never show need, never let anyone see how much you actually want to be held. That promise kept them safe as a child. But as an adult, that same promise keeps them lonely. And here is the painful secret they will never tell you. They hate their own walls. Deep inside, they wish someone could break through. But they are terrified of what happens after the wall falls. What if you leave after seeing the real them? What if you use their softness against them? So they test you, not consciously, but they test you. They pull away to see if you panic. They go cold to see if you stay. They push your limits to see if you break. And every time you react with desperation, their brain says, "See, not safe. Keep the wall up." So what melts this hidden test? Radical emotional stability. When they pull away, you do not collapse into anxiety. You do not send paragraphs explaining your pain. You do not accuse them of being heartless. You simply say, "Okay, I am here when you are ready." And then you go back to your life, not as a game, as a truth. You genuinely mean it. You genuinely have other things to do. You genuinely are not sitting by the phone waiting. That response breaks their pattern, because their whole life, people either chased them or abandoned them. No one ever just stayed calm. No one ever just gave space without resentment. That calmness confuses their nervous system. Confusion is the first crack in the wall, because now they have to ask themselves, why are they not chasing? Why are they not angry? Do they actually not need me? And that question is the beginning of curiosity. Curiosity is the beginning of leaning in. Let us talk about something uncomfortable. The avoidant partner often picks fights over small things. They criticize you. They point out your flaws. They make you feel like you are too much or not enough. This hurts deeply. You think they are rejecting you. But psychology says something else. Avoidant people create distance through criticism because closeness feels scary. The fight is not about the dirty dishes or the late reply. The fight is a smokescreen. Behind the smoke, there is a scared person saying, if I push them away first, they cannot leave me later. If I find their flaws, I do not have to face my own emptiness. This is not manipulation. This is survival. And most people react by defending themselves. They argue back. They explain. They try to prove their worth. That is exactly what the avoidant partner expects. And that expectation keeps the wall high. But watch what happens when you do not defend. When they criticize, you stay calm. You do not get emotional. You do not counterattack. You simply say, I hear you. Let me think about that. And you walk away. Not in anger, in peace. That response shatters their script. They expected a fight. You gave stillness. They expected you to crumble. You stayed solid. And now they are left alone with their own criticism. Without your reaction, their criticism has no fuel. It falls flat. And in that quiet moment, they might feel something rare. Shame. Not the shame you gave them. The shame they have been avoiding. The shame of pushing away someone who never pushed back. That shame is uncomfortable for them. But discomfort is the soil where change grows. Another deep psychological truth. The avoidant partner has a very sensitive shame system. They cannot handle feeling like the bad guy. So when you cry or beg, they shut down. Not because they are evil, because your pain reminds them of every person they could not save, every parent they could not please, every version of themselves they could not fix. They feel helpless, and helplessness makes them disappear. So what works better than tears? Strength, not cold strength, warm strength. You look at them and say, I am hurting, but I will be okay. I do not need you to fix me. I just wanted you to know. That sentence is magic because you are not dumping your pain on them. You are sharing it without demanding they carry it. That feels safe to an avoidant brain. Safe enough to listen. Safe enough to maybe, just maybe, stay in the room. Let us talk about the concept of emotional breathing room. An avoidant person needs space like a fish needs water. It is not rejection, it is regulation. When they feel overwhelmed, they retreat into their cave. They play video games, they scroll on their phone, they work late, they sleep. None of this means they stopped loving you, it means their nervous system is full. And if you stand at the cave entrance demanding they come out, they will dig the cave deeper. But if you stand outside the cave and simply live your life, something shifts. They peek out. They see you laughing with a friend. They see you cooking dinner alone and enjoying it. They see you reading a book without checking your phone. And that sight makes them curious. How are you so okay? Why are you not waiting at the entrance? That curiosity pulls them out of the cave. Slowly, carefully. Not because you pulled, because you did not. Now here is a hard question. How long do you wait? How much space is too much space? The answer is not a number of days. The answer is your own emotional limit. You give space, but you do not disappear. You send a small text every few days. No questions, no pressure. Just thinking of you. Hope your day is light. That is all. If they reply, great. If they do not, you do not double text. You wait. And while you wait, you do not pause your life. You do not check their online status. You do not analyze their silence. You trust the psychology. Silence is not always rejection. Sometimes silence is an avoidant person trying to feel safe enough to speak. And the moment they feel safe, they will speak. Not with a grand confession, with a small step, a meme, a question about your day, a short call. That small step is huge for them. Treat it like gold. Do not say, finally you texted. Say, good to hear from you. Short, warm, no pressure. That response encourages the next step. But what if they never take a step? What if weeks pass and they stay cold? Then you have your answer. Avoidance is not an excuse for emotional abandonment. You can understand their psychology without accepting their neglect. Understanding is not permission. Compassion is not a contract to be mistreated. So you set a quiet boundary inside yourself. You say, I will give you space for 1 month. In that month, I will live fully. If you come back, we can talk. If you do not, I will walk away, not in anger, in self-respect. That boundary is not a threat, it is a truth. And truth is the most loving thing you can give, because lying to yourself and saying they will change someday is not love. It is fear of being alone. And fear never melted any wall. Only courage melts walls. The courage to stay open, and the courage to walk away when staying open breaks you. Let me share a psychological insight that changes everything. Avoidant people are actually highly sensitive. They feel deeply. Too deeply. That is why they built the wall, not because they feel nothing, because they feel everything and could not survive it as children. So they learn to numb, they learn to distract, they learn to appear cold while burning inside. If you want to melt that, you do not add fire. You add gentle consistency. You show up the same way every day. Not too hot, not too cold, just warm and steady. You keep your promises. You do not threaten to leave. You do not use silence as punishment. You become predictable. Predictability is safety. Safety is the melt. Over time, their nervous system starts to recognize you as not dangerous. Not another person who will hurt them. Not another person who will leave. You become the exception. And once you become the exception, the wall starts to crumble from the inside. Not because you broke it, because they finally feel safe enough to lower it themselves. But here is the most important thing you will hear today. You cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. You cannot melt someone who enjoys being frozen. Some avoidant people will never change. Not because you are not enough, because they are not ready, and their readiness is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your own heart. So as you apply these principles, watch their actions, not their words. Do they take small steps toward you? Do they try even badly to connect? Do they stay when you stop chasing? If yes, there is hope. If no, there is your answer. And that answer is not failure. That answer is clarity. And clarity is a gift. Because clarity tells you when to stay and when to go. And knowing when to go is just as powerful as knowing how to melt. In the next section, we will talk about the exact phrases that create emotional safety. The words that lower their guard. the sentences that make an avoidant partner feel seen without feeling smothered. And we will talk about how to rebuild your own emotional foundation so that you never lose yourself in love again. But for now, sit with this truth. The melt does not come from more effort. The melt comes from more peace inside you. When you stop trying to fix them, you free them to fix themselves. And when they see you thriving without their validation, something ancient and powerful awakens in their chest. The fear of losing you, not the fear you gave them, the fear their own heart finally admits. That is the melt. That is the beginning. And you are already closer than you think.